At Stilfontein Hoerskool in the northwest. This after chaos erupted at the school as angry parents stormed classrooms and removed their children, accusing management of racism and discrimination. Lessons at the school have been disrupted for over 2 days over these allegations. Let us now take this discussion further, looking at the Stilfontein Hoerskool and the Laerskool Swaziland issue with Gabriel Crouse. He's from the South African Institute of Race Relations, and he joins me now live in the studios. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Now we have two incidents. The one happened last week at Swaziland Laerskool. The recent one is at Stilfontein Hoerskool. What do you make of the two?
Right. So I've got really very little to say about the second one, but the one that happened at the primary school, grade R, Swaziland, I think that there are multiple and mutually annihilating stories that are out there. We all saw the picture that was just projected of the black and white school children sitting separately. There's a series of other images that might have been taken only moments afterwards of the children interacting, sitting next to each other and playing next to each other in a mixed race way.
Racism and race in South Africa is a very sensitive one as a result of our past, isn't it?
Right, so that's one reason that it's sensitive. Another reason that it's sensitive is that it's a way that people can get away with doing the wrong thing. For example, Jacques Poe in his book, The President's Keepers, which I think was one of the most influential books to come out in the New South Africa, argued that Tom Mayani and other of President Zuma's keepers were in the front row precisely by playing the race card in order to deflect away from corruption within SARS, corruption within ESCOM, corruption within cabinet and within the presidency. So that's one reason to sort of use race for negative purposes. And another is to sort of serve, I think, a more broad political agenda of race nationalism, an agenda of thinking that this country only belongs to people of one race. Yeah. So if I can put something forward, we've been watching the news together, this breaking story out of Kenya, and it's a tragic story, clearly. And I wish I had a hat on so I could take it off to the SABC for its discipline in journalism. This is the kind of journalism I like to see and that I like to practice. There have been no speculative there's been very little speculation, and there's been absolutely no allegations of who's done this without some kind of corroborating evidence. When something bad happens, it's incumbent upon all editors and all journalists to take seriously their responsibility not to inflame tensions by throwing out allegations without some kind of confirmation. And I think that's what's happened in Laerskool Swaziland, and I think that's why Solidarity is taking this case forward. They think that the procedure hasn't been followed. Yeah. Media's jumped on the allegations of racism without checking it up.
But other people, on the other hand, saying that why is Solidarity specifically looking into this issue? Because it is mainly a white organization?
Well, I'm not sure if that's true. If they're looking into this issue because white people are affected, I think that would be a shame, and I think that would be an unsustainable kind of practice for them in New South Africa. It does look like there are indications that the teachers at the primary school involved, Swaziland, are not part of SATU. They're part of a different teachers' union, which is in affiliation with Solidarity, and so it would be in their role as the union that represents those teachers.
Yeah, because we understand that the teacher in question here was not a member of Solidarity before, of course, Solidarity taking up this matter, but she's now a fully paid member. That's what came at the briefing earlier today. Okay,
so the details of that I'm not privy to, but my understanding generally is that there are teachers at that school who are part of SAOU, the South African Teachers Union, not SATU, and that is affiliated with Solidarity, and that's where the connection comes in.
But the question really here, Gabriel, is are we ever going to see a South Africa that is free of such incidents? Are we ever going to see a South Africa that is free of the conversation that we're having now? We had you in studio last year while we were discussing the Colini matter in the very same province. So are we ever going to see that happening?
Right, so I'll say the same thing I said to you last time. Are we ever going to have a South Africa without murder? I don't think so. There's no country in the world that doesn't have murder. I think it's incumbent upon us as decent citizens to react properly. When a murder takes place, for whatever reason, the police need to respond appropriately, citizens need to respond appropriately, people need to call the police and support the criminal justice system so that justice is brought to bear. Is this incident racist? I'm not prepared to say that it is because the evidence is unclear. But where there are incidents of racism, because people take shortcuts, we as citizens need to respond appropriately. And I think the broader crisis at the moment is that we're not responding appropriately. The headlines running from the 10th of January until today on most of South Africa's major publications have been one-sided and have been sort of uncorroborated confirmations that racism has actually taken place, when the very witnesses who've accused people of being racist
what is your definition of racism? What would you classify as racism?
So I think racism is quite straightforwardly when people discriminate against other people on the basis of their race.
So looking at the peak from Laerskool Swaziland, would you not say that? We do know that, of course, that there are investigations currently taking place, but just by looking at that picture, with South Africa being a very sensitive nation as a result of our past, would you not come to that conclusion that you cannot have a group of black students or black learners sitting on their own and then you have a group of white aside? No,
I wouldn't say that. Just last week I was walking around Witwatersrand University. I go there once a month. Right now campus is very empty. But when campus is full and I go there at lunchtime, every single time I find that the vast majority of tables during lunchtime are uni-race tables. Black students sitting alone, white students sitting alone, Indian students
But those are
sitting alone.
elders who can make their own decisions.
Right, so
if you're talking about 6-year-olds,
so it's self-segregation, right? Okay, so but why do they do that? I ask these students why do they do that, and generally the answer is it's less stress this way. Sometimes we hang out across races, but this way is less stress. Now, I don't think that's good enough. I think older students, particularly at places of higher learning, should integrate a lot. But on the very first day of school, it's an extremely traumatic time. It's the time when a child moves from the primary caregiver, usually its original breastfeeder, which has kind of hormonal responses in programming, a sense of trust and a kind of bond, and from the family home into a professional environment where someone has to take care of those kids. On that very first day, it's a huge trauma for the teacher to do whatever it takes to kind of massage the situation so that they've got an easy introduction and then mixed together, I think could be fine. And that's why it's critical to look at those second photos, because if 6 minutes after the fact, those kids are all playing together in some kind of Rainbow Nation brochure picture, then I don't think that there's any argument to be made that it is racist. Now, if that picture was being faked, if that picture was engineered so as to sort of make the case look good after they'd heard some complaints, then I think they've got a very serious case to answer. But that's a question that remains open, and that's why more investigation needs to be done, and that's why the Institute of Race Relations is going to send me tomorrow morning to Swaziland to go and ask some questions myself, and I implore all other journalists
it would
to
actually
look
be
into
very
it further.
interesting to have you back here once you come back from Swaziland. But there's a team that's been assembled to look into this issue by the MEC of Education in the province, not just the Laerskool Swaziland, but the Stilfontein Hoerskool as well. Do you really believe in such teams?
I think that you've got to take it case by case. I believe that it is, it's almost like a starting default position that as a South African patriot, I want to believe in the structures, the checks and balances that we have in place to look at things when they could go wrong. On the other hand, who guards the guardians? And that's part of why I'm a journalist, and I think part of what a lot of the media considers to be their duty is to check up on those teams and make sure that they follow their own function properly. All
right. No, we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you so much for coming through. We'd love to have you back once you come back from Swaziland again.
I look forward to it.
All right. Many thanks there to Gabriel Crouse. He is, of course, from the South African Institute of Race Relations, trying to make sense of the two incidents from the Northwest Province, one from the Laerskool Swaziland and the other one from Hoerskool Stilfontein. So as soon as he's back from his mission finding effort, we'll have him back in studio here to come and tell us what his investigations have actually found.